Welcome to a very special holiday season episode of the Dogger Pass podcast, the 2022 MMA Awards. There's like a month off for UFC action, but we wouldn't leave you hanging. Cody Saftic's on the line. Producer Megan is on the sticks, breaking down the best and the worst of 2022. Not the best year, from my perspective. My bets haven't really been firing. Had some bangers throughout it, but there's been plenty of controversy. It's a very, very eventful year in the world of the UFC this year. Not always for all of the best reasons. We'll get into all of that type of stuff, I'm sure, many times during, the next hour and a half. But Cody, you have any quick thoughts on the year that was 2022?
No, man, it's been a mixed bag for sure. The year started out wickedly hot and then unfortunately did falter as, you got to go with the ups and downs in the MMA betting world. And so, yeah, it actually seems like the year's kind of flowed right by. We're already mid-December, no more UFCs for the rest of the year. And so in terms of the UFC betting slate, not great. Bellator slate wasn't bad. The PFL slates weren't bad. Those random regional show cards in between weren't bad. But yeah, in terms of the UFC, which is obviously the number one product, just so many cards, so many fighters, so many matchups. And I really feel like this has been a year that's been plagued by, we're going to talk about most of it, but injuries and dark clouds and potential fixes and bad judging, which is always a narrative, but especially so this year. So been a crazy year, been a wild year. I can't say I'm the only one that hasn't been the happiest, but all the same, man, happy to be joined by you as always in this festive holiday episode, of course, because there's no UFC for the next 3 weeks. Fight Network wants some content, so here you go, Fight Network and Fight Network's audience. Here is your content.
Before we get into that, and it'll help me get through some of these categories for sure. I owe you a shoey from Mahashate. Mahashate cut like some sort of vein in Rafa Garcia's head, and he lost apparently like 20% of his blood. So like if they were to fight in the streets, Cody, Mahashate won, because one guy's gonna bleed out and the other guy is Mahashate. But either way, a deal's a deal. Thought I would keep it festive. We got spiced rum and holiday nog. They call it holiday nog, which I found a little bit I don't know. Holiday nog.
Holiday nog.
Like, does that mean that it doesn't have egg in it, or like what's going on here?
Yeah. I don't know, but here's my beef with eggnog. I've always had this beef with eggnog. First of all, it's shit. But if it was so good, if you're sitting at home right now thinking to yourself, oh man, what's he talking about? Eggnog's great. I love eggnog. If it was so good, how come they only sell it for like 2 months out of the year? If it was so good, why can't you go into the store in September and buy a liter of eggnog? Can't do it. It's like one of these holiday trickery things. You don't actually like it, but they smooth it in on you. So, Paul, you're drinking one, specifically because you walked into an LCBO, or what do they have in Nova Scotia? What's it called? The LS?
NSLC, Nova Scotia Liquor
NSLC.
Control.
Yeah, there you go. You probably walked in. They've got it sitting right there on the stand. Have some spiced rum holiday eggnog mix, which is fine. I'm just saying, if you were to walk into that same store June or August, it'd be like, you're crazy if you want to drink this crap. So same thing with like pumpkin spice, everything. Pumpkin spice is so good. How come you only enjoy it 2 months out of the year? Anyways, that's my beef.
This doesn't...
I owe you a shoey back. So
I don't think you owe me anything. I don't think you owe me a shoey. That was the deal. You gave me a 2-to-1. You gave me a 2-to-1. You were going to have to do 2 of them if I didn't. The eggnog is like kind of getting connected to the shoe. There's a reason why people don't do this. Don't try this at home. Me and Cody are trained professionals, as always. Rub it up. Yeah, let's go for it.
Getting after it. Yeah, actually, the number one thing we're going to talk about, the first category, is bet of the year. So in terms of bet of the year, this goes back to, wasn't a great year. The best bet I think you could have had on the year, by the numbers, would have been Rowney Bargelos, my boy, losing to Victor Henry. Like, by the numbers, Henry cashes as like a plus 400 ticket. That would have been your bet of the year. Thing is, for me, when my bet of the year, I was on the other side. Your next best bet of the year would have been Aljamain Sterling in the rematch with Peter Yan.
No.
Now, that one makes sense, right? By the numbers, right? He was a big underdog to Peter Yan. That would have been your best bet of the year because it cashed, and it cashed big. Unfortunately, I was on the Peter Yan side, of course. Just didn't think Aljamain was going to do it. So those are the big plus tickets.
I think you're
in terms
missing.
Of my single.
Yeah, that's what the bet of the year is supposed to be, is your personal bet of the year, the best bet that you made. I'll take it over first, and then I'll let you think about it for a second. My best bet of the year was, and I'll reach out to my boy, Clint about this one. I went on to his podcast. He mentioned Johnny Walker by submission was like 14-1. At a certain book that's open 365 days of the year, they had Walker submission round 1 at 66-1, and then round 2 was 100-1, and round 3 was 100-1. So like when you averaged out all of the money, it was Walker by submission was like 28-1. I bet all 3 of those and came away bigly. He won in round 1 by submission. I guess cashes the 66-1 ticket. That was by far my best bet of the year this year. What was yours?
Well, yeah, no, I'm just saying I didn't have those Aljamain and Sterling bets. I didn't have the fade Roundy Barcelos with Victor Henry bet. Those would have been the bets of the year. My best bet on a straight ticket this year would have been shout out to the Shui man himself, Tai Tuivasa. His fight with Derek Lewis, what happened in like February. You got plus 180 underdog on Tai Tuivasa. Unfortunately, he gave it back in that last fight against Sergey Pavlovich. But again, big banger. You knew it was going to get knocked out. And that was the best single shot I think I would have given it on the show in 2022. The best parlay that I hit on my own was just this past weekend, this unified card. And the key 2 things on it was there was one plus 400 underdog and a plus 325 underdog. But was like a huge eye-opener for me, man. I attended the show, right? Bought a ticket as a fan, sat on the back, made my bets pre-fight, but I'd matchmade all these guys, either as an amateur or as a professional. I knew their coaches. I knew their managers. Not that I talked to them about the fight specifically, but I knew there was one guy, right? He's a full-time school teacher out of Manitoba, Christian Bouchard, 2-1, hasn't fought in a while, from a small like Taekwondo gym, and full-time, right? Just got his medicals on a whim and came down. The other kid, 0-2. So the line that they gave up online was plus 325 on it because the 0-2 kid's 0-2 and the other guy's 2-1. But the 0-2 kid was actually 27-5 amateur Muay Thai and then spent a full year at King's MMA. You know, that stuff's online. So I think less is more. I think that's the biggest takeaway. Like, we have to do a show every single week. And there's 12, 13, 14 fights on every single card. Come April, right? Because we started the show April 2014 is when you and I started doing shows together.
Yeah.
So we're coming in on 9 years, right? The cards used to be 10-fight cards, right? It was like there's a main card, there's a small little prelim, and there's a free fight on Facebook. Then they moved to 12 fights because, well, you know what? You might as well add a couple more. In case a couple get canceled, you're back to 10. Then they want to keep them at 12, so they start adding 13 fights and 14 fights. And there's just so many fights. You got to break down every single one. You got to give advice on every single one. But I think the real key is just zone in on your little spots, man. Your spots, that'll be your run. That's where you're going to make your money. The other ones, you're just kind of forcing spots. So best parlay I hit, thankfully, was this past weekend, Unified MMA. That definitely saved the year for me. But in terms of the straight show, bet of the year, one single pick, I'd say Tai Tuivasa over Derek Lewis.
Cool. And I will say, I'm not going to accept your smear campaign against Holiday Nog and Rum because this shit is delicious.
Yeah, once a year, like one little piece of time.
I could see myself like at Easter. I could see myself at Easter indulging in something like this. I think they need to sell Holiday Nog, eggnog, whatever you want to call it, all year round. It's delicious. So
okay.
I will not accept your slander here on this program. All right, biggest storyline of 2022. I mean, this one's pretty easy. The guy got betting, after it had just been legalized, got it completely banned. It's still banned in Ontario. It is the James Krause. And the entire, there's still an investigation going on, but a real dark cloud on the sport of MMA. Obviously, it all stems to the Derek Minner fiasco, whatever the hell you want to call that whole thing. Line movements happening, guy pretty much going in there and shelling up and getting knocked out in round 1. Line movement associated with every single possible angle of that result. And there could be more to the story that, we'll find out in 2023, but it's sometimes it's 2021, I would say, was a really good year for the UFC. A lot of other sports, and like 2020 was good too. It's like a lot of other sports had been canceled and there was like less action out there. UFC started to get out to a bigger crowd. This was a really bad one, and I think is going to set the sport back a little bit. So, I mean, this one's a no-doubter. It's James Krause and the whole betting fiasco that went on there. That's the biggest storyline, in my opinion. What about yours?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. It's hard to see a story that not only just grabbed attention this big, but also has been lingering on, because everything else just kind of passes. Oh, something happened, it passes. John Jones did something stupid, it passes, right? You stop talking about it. But there's so many layers to this in that the NSAC is now launching an investigation, and UFC's got a third-party organization launching an investigation. Ontario bans it. Alberta follows suit with Ontario. New Jersey bans it. It's just kind of all over the place. And I still think that every day when I wake up, I kind of do check the news. Like, is there any update? Like, has anybody said anything? Has anybody squealed yet? Because at some point, someone's going to squeal. And the media, they're staying on it too. Brandon Moreno's moved camps. He's got a new gym. Oh, this fighter's moved camps. He's got a new gym. This is going on. This is going on. So it's a lot of moving parts. But I think it's one of those things that you'll see a Netflix documentary on someday, where it's like he pulled off like not the greatest like heist, but it's the kind of thing that you could go back, and not that they'll be able to prove it, but if they seized his phone records, they seized his computer, they seized stuff. Like, imagine it came out that it was like, oh, Tim Elliott worked a fight and Gina Mazzani had worked a fight, and Zach Cummins. Zach Cummins is actually heart of gold. He'd never do that. You know what I'm saying?
Jeff
like,
Molina.
Gina Mazzani and Tim Elliott. Nah, I don't know. I feel like he's trustworthy too, and he's winning. But and David Onama, when he lost to Nate Landwehr, it felt like he didn't try, right? But I would think that there's other people that are like on the inside that it's possible. All I'm saying, possible.
Yeah, I'm hoping
for a story. Yeah, I think people like controversy, people like drama. This story's got it all, dude. This story's got it all. Okay, think about this. First of all, people like the fighter. Boom, James Krause, former UFC fighter, but he's not relevant anymore. He's retired. Boom, coach is Brandon Moreno, who's got a title shot coming up. Okay, and he's a gambler, and he's got Ariel Helwani gives him his free infomercial on the MMA Hour, and UFC Fight Pass puts him up. He's got a Discord. He's got YouTube. They're helping him make money. Then he has this guy work a fight. And the last thing, if you were like not that interesting of a story, I need some sex, right? Because everybody likes some sex appeal. It's like you got a three-way love triangle between him and Megan Anderson.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Who doesn't like a good alleged story? So allegedly, I guess it's a square. It's not even a triangle because he's got a wife thrown in the mix and Laura Sanko. So who the hell knows what's going on? And left out of all this, because no one even cares about Derek Minner anymore. Like, all the focus is on James Krause. But Derek Minner's cut from the UFC. So I think it's a big story. I think it would be crazy to say that any other story in the UFC, or this is not even like a UFC show, but we cover UFC on this show. So, like, what was their biggest story? Got to be this. And it ties in perfectly to what we do. So we gamble as well. We bet as well. So just very intertwined.
I assure you, when the UFC does this type of end-of-year thing, this will not be the biggest storyline that happened this year. But yeah, I mean, what a mess. What an absolute mess. Hopefully it all works itself out, and, the great people of the province of Ontario can go back to the legal betting markets and put wagers down on UFC bets, which I think was a bit of an overreaction. It's just like, I think New Jersey, if you were ever going to ban anything, they maybe did it right, where it's just like, we just don't want anything to do with James Krause. But in fairness, I suppose, to these other commissions, is like, they don't know how wide his reach is in any of this. We're going to find all of that out in 2023. All right, most fadeable gym, Cody. Who you got?
To be honest with you, I don't really have a name for this. It seems like every year it's like you want to say the most fadeable gym. For me, I always want to say Greg Jackson Wink, so fadeable. But actually in 2022, they've made almost zero splash, zero noise. They don't have a ton of fighters on the roster. So it's hard for me to say that they're the most fadeable gym. In terms of other gyms, it's like, what other gyms had really that bad of a year? Doesn't seem to me like there's really a gym of the year or a worst gym of the year. Just kind of everybody's got a ton of fighters. There's literally fighters out of every corner of the earth coming through. And I know who I would say is gym of the year, but in terms of the most fadeable gym, don't really have a clear, concise answer for you.
Yeah.
I'm actually interested in seeing what you said. I always list Jackson. I always list TriStar. That's what I do. But really, if you think about it, and I tried to go back and see how many guys did they have fight this year and what was their record. Like, they're not really doing anything. It's hard to say I fade them. They just don't really got a whole lot of guys there.
Yeah, when in doubt, we'll just go with Kraus. So we'll say Glory MMA and Fitness is the most fadeable gym of 2022. Most fadeable fighter, I'll take this one because we'll never be able to say his name again, I don't think. The guy was on just an epic losing streak. He did fight twice in 2022, getting rear naked choked in the second round against Brendan Allen, getting left cross knocked out in round 1 by Mikey O'Baby. It is Smiling Sam Alvey. He knew where the bodies were buried. Everyone knows it. The only way you can be on like an 8-9 fight losing streak or winless streak. He had the split decision against Da Ung Jung in 2020 mixed in there as well. But the only way is that he had secrets, and Dana had to keep this guy around until finally he was just like, we got to move on. But yeah, Sam Alvey was the most fadeable fighter, quite clearly. The guy hasn't won since 2018 against a ballooned up John Vellante. We could call this award the Sam Alvey Award moving forward, perhaps. But yeah, Sam Alvey for me. What about you?
So actually fading this man almost was my bet of the year 2 times, but I decided to go with the Tai Tuivasa one. But the most fadeable fighter is Alan Baudot. I mean, talk about someone who never should have been on the roster. You and I discuss it all the time. How did he get to the UFC in the first place? He's not big for a heavyweight. The first time of the year, I nailed Parker Porter against him, but I top-ticketed Parker Porter. And if you remember the fight, it really wasn't that good for Parker Porter. He won, but he probably lost the first round. Second and third round, super greasy. He got the job done. Didn't feel great about it, especially because he was minus 250, I think. But it was you just knew Alan Baudot's not winning a UFC fight. Let's be real. Then they go and give you plus 105 on Josh Parisian, who, don't get me wrong, not very good, but he's fighting Alan Baudot. And just line it up, baby. First round, somewhat competitive, and then boom, Baudot does what he always does. Tires out. As soon as he tires out in the second, he gives it up pretty easy. And it's sad that Alan Baudot will no longer have employment with the company because the most fadeable guy for sure. You don't even have to tape study his opponent if you don't want. Just you see him, boom, let's go the other way.
That's a great answer. I wasn't thinking about that one. But yeah, Baudot, if I saw Baudot in a UFC fight, it's just okay. Oh, and you're giving me a decent number to actually fade him at. It is basically free money. I will say I've never put a cent on Alan Baudot, and that's probably one of my best decisions of the last couple of years. Submission of the year. I'm on Tapology. They've got a nice little list of stuff here. They got Krylov versus Craig, which is kind of hilarious because Krylov had no reason to go to the ground with Paul Craig. There was Lemos versus Jessica Andrade, the standing triangle. That one was pretty funny. There's Prohashka in round 5 against Glover. That was more of based off of exhaustion, I would say. Then as I go down, there's Guida versus Puelles. My favorite one, it's only number 11 on their list, but it's number 1 in my heart, was Alexei Oleinik getting the neck crank from Scarfhold against Vandera, who I don't know what the hell he was thinking. It's just you keep this fight standing, my man, and Oleinik's got nothing. And decided to go to the ground with him. And then even afterwards, in the back hallways of the venue that they were at, was getting tips on how that couldn't happen to him again. That was my favorite one. That was my favorite submission. There are plenty of good submissions that were probably more technical and pretty, but that one was the one that warmed the cockles of my heart. So that is the submission of the year for yours truly. What about you, bud?
I almost went with this past weekend, Said Nurmagomedov versus Sayakub Kakramanov. Like, what a nasty little ninja choke that was. And he's getting wrecked for the most part, the majority of the fight. He's on his way to losing, and the way he set the trap and locked that thing in, beautiful, right? So you love to see the comeback. You love to see the technique. How many ninja chokes get caught in the UFC? It was a nice win. However, the more I thought about it, I had to go with Yuri Prochazka versus Glover Teixeira. I mean, talk about stakes. It's not just you submit a guy, but you're in the fifth round, late in the fifth round of an absolute war that's going back and forth for a UFC title against a legend who's never been submitted. And you quite literally need to finish him or you're going to lose this fight. And he does. So to me, it's just like, that's human emotion. That's drama. Like, we do it because we like fights, right? I mean, gambling, we love gambling too. But at the end of the day, you're a martial arts fan. You're a fight fan. You like watching the fights. And so high stakes, high emotion, those are kind of that big fight feel. This is a world title fight with two of the top guys on the planet to end in that fashion. Mind you, it's a no hooks for a naked choke. So is it the prettiest of techniques? No. No one's ever submitted Glover before. So monumental, and I just think you can't take away from that moment. So I would say that's the submission of the year.
All right, we're going to move on to Coach of the Year. This one's always pretty difficult. I would have to say I would probably, I guess he had a bit of a rough go at the end with Adesanya losing the belt. But like Volkanovski has skyrocketed up to being the pound for pound number one guy in the world right now. So I would have to I'll go with Eugene Behrman, City Kickboxing, being the Coach of the Year this year. But that's a tricky one all the way around. What do you think?
Yeah, honestly, I went with James Krause. I know you went with most fadeable gym of the year, James Krause. It didn't make sense. This gym's not that bad. So why does this make sense as Coach of the Year? But James Krause is on a roll, man. That's the craziest thing about this is he literally burnt up his own career. But he was finally breaking through. Like, for the longest time, he had the Tim Elliott's and the Zach Cummings of the world. But finally, he's making it a destination gym where people are actually going to Kansas and getting some world-class work in. And so he gave them some great advice. And the best advice that he gave was Derek Minner, throw this fight in the first round and get pizzade, because it wasn't going to make any money losing the fight straight up, right? Let's be real here. Go out there, get TKO'd legitimately, maybe in the second round, maybe in the third round. I don't know. Probably not the third round. This is Derek Minner we're talking about. Probably a TKO in the second round, take some unnecessary damage and walk away. But now they hammered the shit out of it. And so, as a coach, right, he gave some excellent advice. Thing is, he gave excellent advice to different bettors and different groups, and not me, and not the UFC, and not the regulatory body. And so they don't want that. They don't want their cut. James Krause cut them out. He's done now. But in terms of a coach, dude, decent coach. High ring IQ, just not the best businessman, I would say.
I feel like you're trolling with that answer. What if all of these big wins by him were all rigs? That's possible, Cody. You got to consider that.
Yeah. I am joking, but the thing is that, and maybe it's just because we're getting old and none of these categories really like matter anymore. Like, we cut out ring card to the girl. It used to be like a staple, and it used to be like MMA Company of the Year, and Tapa would win it all the time. Leading Man of the Year, Dana White wins it all the time. It's like it just kind of becomes redundant with bullshit. Yeah, but in terms of head coach, it's like how do you pick one guy? Like if you want my personal opinion, no trolling, right? Coach of the Year, this could be Nurmagomedov, right? All of his guys win all of the fucking time. Sorry, write that time code down, Megan. All of Khabib's guys win all of the time, right?
That's true.
They're the top gym. They're crushing. I put them as gym of the year. I don't even know what the gym's called. Is the Eagles MMA?
I'm changing my pick. Khabib is the coach of the year.
Bro,
nobody beats Khabib's fighters.
Passes it down to Khabib. This guy puts on 100 pounds, sits ringside, and smacks the goddamn side of the octagon. And it's like he gets results, right? Who beats his guys? If
nobody. They're afraid.
The OVs that come out of his camp.
They're afraid to lose in front of Khabib. I would be too.
Yeah, fear of God.
The guy wakes up and pisses. The guy wakes up and pisses excellence. We're changing. Both of us are picking Khabib as the coach of the year. And just to answer your leading man thing, that's the biggest joke of
what a joke.
They've been running those MMA awards since 2009. Dana White has won every year. Like, talk about...
How could you make a argument for Bjorn Rebney at the time, and then Scott Coker, or Chartreuse or like any of the, I don't know.
hard
It's a one game business, right?
Yeah,
So
everyone
I
else
understand that they
is.
can.
Yeah, it's where everyone wants to be, and then if you can't cut it there, you end up going to the other places. That's the nature of this business.
That's it.
That's just it. That's just it. All right, we got referee of the year. You have one that jumps out at the top of your head?
Yeah, again, I think it's another category where if you gave me worst referee of the year, Mark Smith, so bad, man, so bad. But in terms of like the best referee of the year, yeah, I don't really have one. I think I'm leaning towards nowadays. My favorite referee would be Jason Herzog. I feel like when he's in there, I know I'm going to get a legitimate call. There's not going to be some bullshit fence grab. He's not going to warn them 5 times and not doing anything about it. Like, he's very much in control. And I think that really much matters to me. And Keith Peterson does a fine job, but I feel like he's starting to slip. And then even just this past weekend, like, get out of the way, dog. Like, why does he keep getting bumped into by the fighters? Like, because they're moving lots? Like, you got to know where to be and when they're to be there. I met Peterson in real life. Nice guy, don't get me wrong, but you think he's a 45-year-old retired skateboarder. Does smell like cigs and booze. I can totally confirm that. But, he looks like Hank Hill's dad, Cotton Hill, from King of the Hill. Like, he's a short stump of a man. Can't reach into the bottom of his own pockets. Good guy, don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't say he's a referee of the year. Herzog's a black belt. Herzog's got more experience than anybody, and he's like in shape, good-looking guy, ready to go. So Jason Herzog, for my money's worth, that's the referee of the year.
That was actually my guy too. He's never gonna get, like, he doesn't get the street cred. He doesn't get the recognition that any of the other people do. Like, Mark Goddard won it this year at, like, the regular ones. Herb Dean had won it many, many years. It's like
all the time.
Honestly, Herb Dean's been washed for like 5 years now. The guy's way too late stopping fights, way out of position. It's just like he seems like not athletic enough to be in there, and it's kind of gotten dangerous, to be perfectly honest. I feel like the same as you. It's like anytime Herzog's in there, it's just like it's going to be called fair and square. He doesn't make it about himself. Like, that's my problem with Goddard, is that sometimes I feel like Goddard, like, he has an ego and he tries to, like, make the fight about himself. He tries to insert himself as part of the story in a fight. It's like Herzog doesn't do any of that stuff. That's probably why he doesn't get recognized by these, these bigger bodies either, because the best referee is like, it's almost like until the fight's actually over, you don't even recognize that he's in there. You know what I mean? He lets the fighters do their work.
Invisible.
They respect what he's in there doing. That's why I think he is the best as well. Like, every ref is going to make some mistakes. I'm sure people will be like, oh, Herzog messed up this fight or that fight. It's just like, Herzog does some good stuff, and I hope in 2023 he gets some bigger spots, because I think he's earned it, to be perfectly honest. All right, we got the comeback of the year. Lots of good options. I was thinking of, like, this past weekend, like, Said Yokub Kakramanov was up like minus like 1,500, minus 1,600 in round 2, and then Said Nurmagomedov gets the submission win. That's a big one. I mean, Glover Teixeira was like a minute away from finishing, or from winning probably a decision there against Yuri Prohashka. Just because of the level of the fight, that's the one I'm going to go with. Yuri Prohashka getting a round 5 submission against Glover Teixeira based solely off of exhaustion. I feel like that was like the comeback of the year, because he was a minute away from losing his title situation altogether. So that's what I'm going to go with based on the stakes of the fight. And it's probably fight of the year too, when we get there.
That's fair. Considered going with it, but I had already taken it as submission of the year, and I had a feeling that you might take it because, listen, it probably is the comeback of the year, just considering what the judges' scorecards were actually at. So I decided to go with Matt Schnell versus Sumaderji. Man, he was out, bro. We all know that Matt Schnell doesn't have the best durability, can't take the best punch, and Sumaderji's got that straight left down the middle from the southpaw stance. Drops Schnell. Schnell's down. He pops back up. He's hurt. Wobbly legs. Battered again, dropped a second time, comes out in the second round, wobbly legs. Sumaderji hits him, it goes to the ground, and boom, Schnell throws up that triangle choke and locks it in. So to me, like, that's a comeback, man. He's out. He is getting knocked around. He is not going to have a good night. And Matt Schnell's got a nasty guard game. He's got a nasty triangle choke. Goes out and loses his very next fight by knockout. That's kind of the knock on Matt Schnell. It doesn't take a great punch. But in this one instance with Sumaderji, he's down twice on the canvas, back up, and then locks up a triangle choke off his back. To me, that's a hell of a comeback. So I decided to go with Schnell.
Don't hate it. Don't hate it whatsoever, buddy. Gym of the year.
I went with Khabib's gym. Again, I don't really know what exactly they're called, but man, it's just like he's got an excellent team of guys around him. I've always said this for a long time, right? If you just lifted up visas, you lifted up passports, it was free travel. Anybody could just travel to any part of the world, and the UFC absolutely did not care about their business model. Then all of the guys in the UFC would be Russian. All the champions would be Russian. All the contenders would be Russian. Pretty much the entire UFC would be Russian. There's so many guys in Russia that would come over here and throttle these guys. But most of them can't get out of Russia. Most of them can't leave. They don't have visas. They don't have passports. And the UFC is extremely smart about it. They're not going to take all of them, right? You're only going to take a few. You don't want them dominating every ranks. The American fan wants to turn in and see an American champion. There's so much flack that happens of where are all the American champions? You don't want a sport dominated by other countries. But beyond that, Canadian fighter speaks English, a Brazilian fighter, yeah, they mostly speak Portuguese, but they'll learn English. Most guys will learn English. Russians will not learn English. They will speak Russian. They'll speak Russian. That's their native tongue, and that's what they'll stick with. So marketing them, very difficult for the UFC. How can you have a champion that's going to sell products and sell sponsorships and have people come when they can't engage with the crowd? So what you do is classic wrestling marketing. You just have one badass Russian. That's all you need. One badass Russian. He's Ivan Drago. He's from the USSR. He's wrestling bears. You have that guy. That's what they build around. But the more that you let these guys in, the more they're going to dominate. And so why wouldn't they want a Usman or Magomedov, right? They had Khabib. They got Umar. Why would you let Usman go to Bellator? It's like we can't take them all because they're going to come here and they're going to dominate every rank. And everybody's going to have an OV at the end of their name. And then not only that, but they're trying to get guys like Jeremy Stevens. And they're trying to get guys like Alex Morono. And they're trying to get guys that are just going to, Nate Landwehr, Nate the Train, baby, stand there and throw. Because at the end of the day, people don't want to admit it, but that's what fans want to see. If they're going to a Boston Pizza and tuning in, that's what they want to see. So Russian guys don't do that. They take you down. They dominate you. They're not getting in a slugfest with you. They will take you down. They will grind you into bits. And they will hold you there. So as a purist, I love it, right? George used to do that. Didn't used to complain about that. But the fans, they don't necessarily like it. So UFC has to slowly leak them in. One leaves, bring one more in, because otherwise they'll just dominate. And Khabib, what they're doing in the mountains, what they're doing with their, I don't know, everything's on point. And when you see a guy with Khabib in his corner, it's a serious problem. And talking about bets of the year, this could have been another contender for me personally, but Bilal Muhammad in his last fight against
Sean Brady.
Sorry, Bilal Muhammad. Yeah, Sean Brady, right? He's plus money against Sean Brady. And he's tough. He's durable. He's going to grind. But he's got Khabib with him. Khabib says, you know what? I like you, and I'm going to coach you for this. And he goes and he spends like 3 weeks with him. And he comes out and he just like puts on a career best performance again. So, again, is it Eagles MMA? Like, I'm not 100% sure of the exact name on their team. But the Russians,
Pavlovich is
with, in 2020,
technically with them too.
They're going to run all the ranks. Pavlovich takes the heavyweight title. Islam's got the 55-pound title. Could go up to 170 and make some serious noise. Islam Makhachev against Leon Edwards. I got Islam Makhachev. Him versus Usman, not so much. Like Usman, I think would be a much tougher problem, but it's not crazy to think that these Russians are just going to take over every rank. It's Said Nurmagomedov. He's not even related to them. He's going to go in there and take over.
Cousin Umar's on his way up.
Yeah, Usman, he's a 55er, so that's probably why the UFC didn't want him. They already got Makhachev. I bet you that's why he signed with Bellator. I bet you Ali was like, you don't want to fight these guys, in 55? Okay, we'll just go over here and smoke them at 55. So they got problems for everybody across the map. They got a guy in every weight class, and they're going to be a problem once they all come over and pool over. So Gym of the Year, Team Russia.
Eagles MMA. Yeah, 2023 will probably also be their year. And for the foreseeable future, like there's guys probably that they're training with right now that we haven't even heard of, and that they're going to be making some noise in the next couple of years too. Like, Khabib went from being great as a fighter, arguably the greatest fighter. I think the greatest fighter, people always get into the argument of like what makes the greatest fighter. My interpretation of it is like when they were at the top of their game, they were more dominant than anybody else, and I still think it's Khabib. I don't get into those debates too often with people. GSP had a great career. John Jones had a great career, but it's like a lot of their fights were like really, really, really competitive. As Khabib got into his prime, and we didn't see too much of his prime, it's just like nobody was even close. Like he was just smashing fools, and now he's doing that on the on the other side of the fence. What were you gonna say?
No. That's about it, man. I completely agree. Sorry. The only thing I was going to add is you'll see this all the time. Maybe like badass Russian guy in the UFC, and then he'll have lost an amateur fight that happened during the course of his pro career. Yeah. You got to go back on like the bottom of topology. It happens all the time. And then that random Russian guy that beat him like never really went on to do anything. It's like, how is it that some dude never heard of him, probably a 3-time Russian Sambo champion, takes this amateur fight, throttles this guy who's already 7-0 as a pro, and then this pro goes on to world caliber fighting. Whatever happened to the other guy? It's like, yeah, he probably had to like tend to his farm or like got killed. Or I don't know, man, but like I'm trusting you said it in best. There's guys over there that we've never heard of. They could fly over right now and smash top 5 guys. It's just you haven't heard of them and you may never, but look for the Russian invasion to continue.
All right, let's move on. We've got upset of the year. I mean, the thing that made me most upset this year was finding out that James Krause, Laura Sanko, and Megan Anderson may or may not have allegedly been in a love triangle. No, actually, all seriousness. I mean, I don't know how you could say it's not Amanda Nunes getting submitted by Juliana Pena in their first match. That's pretty clearly the upset of the year. Cost me a whole boatload of money. Yeah, what an absolute mess that whole situation was. No, like not like there were people who bet it and they had, okay, I think, the odds are a little bit off. Nobody was just out there outright picking Juliana Pena to pull off that upset. That has all of the makings of upset of the year, as far as I'm concerned. You have any retort to that?
Yeah, that fight actually happened December 2021, so technically it wouldn't qualify as like an upset of the year for 2022. But I would go with Aljamain Sterling
no. Don't put those words in my mouth. Don't try to throw me off of the ledge. I was just looking at it on this list over here, buddy. Yeah. It was UFC 269. Oh yeah, it was December 11th. And why was on? Now I got egg on my face. All right, then we'll go with finding out
eggnog.
That there was eggnog on my face.
You should do another eggnog shoey to make up. I'll have another beer. You should have another eggnog shoey to make up for that. And I'm gonna go with Jan versus Aljamain Sterling 2. Listen, we all seen Aljamain Sterling versus Peter Yan 1. And all that one was Best Actor of the Year. Aljamain won and no part of Peter Yan. He goes and he takes a whole bunch of time off. Peter Yan competed in the time off. He beat Corey Sandhagen. It was another Fight of the Year contender. He's coming into this fight in excellent shape. What does Aljamain Sterling have to offer him? And listen, backpacked his ass. I get it. He was a big underdog. I don't think a whole lot of people thought Aljamain Sterling was going to win. And there's been a lot of bad decisions this year. That was a good decision, man. Listen, it's control time. I get it, but you can't take someone back, control that much of the round, and then lose it. So egg on Peter Yan's face because he talked a whole lot of smack and then loses to Sean O'Malley right after that. Actually, shit, I think I might go Sean O'Malley over Peter Yan now that I'm thinking about it. Who the hell was picking Sean O'Malley?
There were people
Tell
out
me
there
one person. I never met nobody. At least nobody with a straight face. That wasn't on his podcast, as a fan of his. The argument was it was going to be a slow start from Peter Yan. That maybe O'Malley would win the first round and then maybe bank the second, and then he would be able to coast on that. And bad decision, yeah. But Sean O'Malley, look, he's up for breakout fight of the year, right? He's up for, I wouldn't say fighter of the year. That was a coming out party, man. He should have lost. I scored it against him. Don't get me wrong, but
he kept it competitive enough that it was not a bad decision.
Yeah. and you and I, that's one thing I respect you. You know that, brother. But the one thing that I've always seen you've had the biggest read on, like the biggest, Paul and I are on the exact same page with this. Is like a close fight is not a robbery, man.
Yeah.
I have Sean Strickland. Don't get me wrong. I thought he won. Don't get
I
me
had
wrong.
Cannonier. I
robbery.
wouldn't have been upset
Nah.
if it went the other way either. Like I had him winning. I scored it for him, but I'm probably a little bit biased because I have money behind it. But it's like, that was my biggest annoyance actually this past, after this past card. It's like, people were like, oh, judges messed it up again. It's just like, no, guys, like, close fights happen. There's no yes or no answer. It's like, it's open to interpretation. Some people are going to favor certain things a little bit more. There's bad decisions. And then there's fights like that where, like, every single round you could make the argument for each guy. It's like, those fights are going to continue to exist any single time that there's fights. Like, that's when fights are that close. The books, frankly, it was a pick'em fight by the odds. It played out like a pick'em fight in reality. It's just like, that was a 50-50 fight. Cannonier got the nod, but like, when you win those ones, when you lose those ones, don't go patting yourself on the back. Oh, I'm a genius. I knew, that type of stuff. And if you lose those type of ones, realize that like sometimes you're going to end up on the wrong side of it, or sometimes you're going to end up on the right side of it. It's just like, just realize that was 50-50. There was really no value on the bet that you made, and you were either unfortunate or fortunate. But like, it all works itself out in the wash. Like, I thought it was insane, some of the takes I saw about like, oh, it was very clear that this guy won. It's just like, my entire timeline is split on this. When you go on like MMA decisions, everybody is split on this. Like, it was a split decision, classic 50-50 fight, and Cannonier happened to get the nod. Like, it was kind of crazy. Like, some of the takes that I saw, I was just like, mute. Just like, if that's what you think about fights, I don't really need to have your opinions showing up on my feed, because you've lost it, bud. But yeah, that's I thought it was insane, some of the people calling that a robbery. Like, that's just a close fight.
Yeah, honestly, like, whatever. I lost a good chunk of money, so I was like, no. And then I was like, I'll go to Sherdog. Sherdog always scores every round 3 guys. Got a good idea. All 3 guys from Sherdog's got it for Strickland. I'm like, call my dad. I'm like, what do you think won? He's like, I think the white guy won. All right, yeah, fair enough. Then I check MMA decisions. Yeah, no, it was split right across the map. Like, nothing of this is a robbery. You want to see a robbery? Go check out Diego Sanchez versus Ross Pearson. Like, that's what a robbery looks like. This is a close fight. And I know people are also upset about last week, and it's just like, oh man, well, Ankalaev should have won, and maybe they just don't want one more Russian champion because these guys aren't going anywhere. God damn. The main thing is, it's like, when they're close fights, sometimes nothing happens, like the Paddy Pimblett Jared Gordon fight. Again, you may score it for Jared Gordon, and that's totally okay. You're not wrong. But did Jared Gordon completely beat the brakes off this guy, and they stole that win bonus away from him?
Yeah.
Did Jared Gordon, like, maybe edge him out in some of these exchanges and hold him up against the cage for more time than he was held up against the cage? Like, to me, it's like, you got to go out and fight, man. You're fighting to win. So,
yeah, holding someone up against the cage in the year 2022, it's just like, the judges are basically just calling that nothing. So there was like 3. It was on Herb Dean, who, always gets like coach or referee of the year. It's just like, I think Herb should have stepped in much sooner, and that would have maybe given Jared a better chance of winning. It's like, holding people up against the cage in the year 22, it's a stall tactic. Nobody's giving any, like, if you land any. Patty landed some elbows from that position. I think the judges looked at that. I don't even know if they really necessarily landed, but he's trying to do some damage. And that's what the judges are rewarding these days. Like, I thought it was a bad decision, but I didn't think it was like worth all of the outrage that I saw. Like, it was not a good decision. Maybe one of the worst, like the worst scorecard of the year was actually on the Bellator card. Danny Sabatello 50-45. Like, that was like egregiously bad.
Yeah, but I thought he won. So, I don't know. Maybe not 50-45, but I thought he won the
50-45 was really bad. I could have seen 48-47 for him. But, like, there were a couple rounds in there that, like, I thought it was pretty clear that Stotts won those rounds. That was, like, the problem I had with it. That was another fight. That was a very, very close fight. I actually thought Sabatello won all things fair and equal when we went to the scorecards, but I wasn't screaming robbery either. Like, you know, he's a very one-dimensional guy. He doesn't cause any damage when he gets those takedowns. So it is what it is. We got a little bit derailed here, but you know, I feel like people know what our opinions and thoughts are on these things now. We've got knockout of the year. There were a bunch of bangers, to be perfectly honest. And I find it, because I thought the guy was actually dead for a second. Chandler, that front kick to the face of Tony Ferguson. Oh my God. Like, I thought Ferguson was like, I mean, he may have actually, like, we saw Ferguson come back out. And, you know, Nate Diaz was able to, you know, get one up on him in his last time out. Like, that probably was the end of Tony Ferguson as we will see moving forward. Like, he was absolutely folded. What a vicious knockout. I mean, obviously, Usman versus Edwards, the level of that fight, the amount of attention on that type of fight, the fact that I had Edwards tickets that were dead in the water. And then they were risen and, you know, and cashed for me. What a smart bet. I'm such a genius for, you know, having a guy who was like plus 2,000 in round 5 and pull off a Hail Mary knockout like that. I mean, he set up the knockout really, really nicely. But yeah, I'm not going to pat myself on the back for that type of thing. But yeah, I mean, in terms of like sheer damage and like, oh my God, like when I was like, cut back to Tony, like I need to see that Tony's like not dead. It's Chandler versus Ferguson. That was nasty.
Yeah, that was an absolutely nasty knockout. Absolutely. And you know what? I think about the big moment. What was the big moment? What was I needed to win in the 5th round, and I came out and I put it on the line. And so right off the get-go, I was like, wow, what about Israel Adesanya versus Alex Pereira? Here's a guy that's otherwise about to lose the fight, and he goes out there and fights his card out in the 5th round, and he clips who's known as the next Anderson Silva. Like, he's so high on a pedestal, is Israel Adesanya. You could make that upset of the year, not because it was a huge numerical upset, but just because you had a guy that was ranked highly in the pound for pound getting knocked out. But here's the thing. As soon as he gets knocked out, you have so many people online being like, man, early stoppage. Man, he was good for some more. How could that be knockout of the year? Usman versus Leon Edwards, I never saw one single person online say Usman was still good to go because, brother, he was sprawled out. Holy shit, that's got to be KO of the year. It's the same thing, high stakes, welterweight world championship. Edwards maybe wins the 1st round, loses 2, 3, and 4. He's about to lose this fight. This fight is gone. Bettors are ripping up their tickets. It is over. And not only is it over, but I need to go and do something that no man has ever done before, which is knock out Kamaru Usman, who's otherwise been beating my ass all night. Beautiful high kick, out the whole way down, hits the canvas, eyes rolled back. It's a meme everywhere on the internet. A huge underdog win, huge comeback, huge story, and fifth round. Crazy. That's got to be KO of the year for my money's worth.
All right. Moving on down. We've got Breakthrough Fighter of the Year. I was looking at like the MMA Awards once, and like I don't know if I necessarily agree. Like Paddy Pimblett won it on the other side, but it's like I don't know. Recent results would indicate that it's like no, he is who we think he is. And then like Molly McCann was in the mix there. She had a breakthrough, and then she got absolutely mauled by Blanchfield. I think that kind of she is who we think she is type of situation for her as well. It's a tough category, to be perfectly honest. What exactly is a breakthrough? Like other guys on the list, like Tai Tuivasa was nominated for this. Things were looking pretty good, and then Sergey Pavlovich absolutely folded him. What about if it's him? Sergey Pavlovich, relative unknown, frankly, and a lot of people would have criticized him for the Overeem loss in the past, and like now he's right up there with the top 5 of the heavyweight division. So by reverse engineering the entire situation, I'll land on Sergey Pavlovich. Other people who were mentioned in that category, Johnny Eblen in Bellator, and Gamrot, obviously in the UFC. But I think Pavlovich, he closed strong with knocking out, like absolutely folding Tuivasa like that. I mean, nobody else had really done that to Tuivasa in quite some time. Yeah, it was a very impressive performance and a guy we're going to have to really look out for in 2023.
You know what, man? You stole my answer. I had Sergey Pavlovich. Pavlovich coming into 2022. Think about this, right? It would have been like, yeah, he's got 2 wins in the UFC over Marcelo Golm and Maurice Green. What kind of resume is that, Paul? It's no resume at all. Then you start the year and it's like Shamil Abdurakhimov. Well, Abdurakhimov fought a lot of good guys, and if anything, gives them a good test. It's like, boom, smoked in the first round. Well, let's give him the Black Beast. Derek Lewis is a former title contender. He's fought all the best guys in the world, and boom, smoked him out 55 seconds. Well, let's give him Tai Tuivasa. Just fought for a world championship. Gave Cyril Gane probably the toughest fight outside of Ngannou, but Ngannou kind of just held on to him. Like, Tai Tuivasa gave him a good fight till he got knocked out. Boom, go smoke him out of there as well. It's like, oh my God, this guy is very problematic. And whereas, Gamrot, how can Gamrot win breakthrough fighter of the year when he just lost to Beneil Dariush? Well, why isn't Beneil Dariush winning? Because he's not a breakthrough fighter. He's already an established guy. Pavlovich was not really established until this year. And now you look at him, it's like he's a title contender. So to me, that's breaking through. I also consider Sean O'Malley, simple fact, beats Peter Yan. He's considered a fringe 15 guy. He's considered a fringe top 10 guy. People want to see him lose to Marlon Vera again. All of his wins are to lower level guys. He gets thrown into the wolves against Peter Yan, and he wins. That's a breakthrough. But he kind of already had a little bit of hype on him. Same with Patty. They kind of had a little bit of hype on them. So I don't know that neither of those guys really broke through. Pavlovich, he broke through. Because you took the answer, though, just to throw something else in the mix, I would say that Paulo Rosas Jr. This kid's 17 years old. Comes on the Contender Series.
Raul.
No one's ever heard of him. Let's be real.
He hasn't broken through so much that Cody doesn't even know his first name.
Yeah, I used to call him Paulo. Yeah, Raul Rosas. It's like when he's on the Contender Series, he's 17 and a half, right? He's fighting Mando Gutierrez, and I actually picked Mando Gutierrez. Simple fact, this kid's 17. He wins. Didn't look great, but he won. Dana says, I'm going to give him a contract. I totally thought it was going to be like developmental. Not necessarily that they would make him fight outside the UFC once, but that they would at least stall the kid a year. Take a year. Edmund Shabazian, same thing. He just came off a year. You're young. You're talented. Take a year. They throw him right in there with Jay Perrin. And Jay Perrin's no world beater by no stretch of the imagination, but he completely dominated him. Like Mario Batista is a top 10 guy. Mario Batista had a lot more problems with Jay Perrin than this 18-year-old kid did. So to me, it's like you did not know who he was at the beginning of the year, and then now to end the year, one fight on Contender Series, one fight on the UFC, he's totally broken through. The difference is this kid's 2 or 3 more years from probably capturing a title, whereas like Sergey Pavlovich may fight for one next year. Like he broke all the way through. If there was a door, bro, it's gone. Part of the frame's gone too. The wall's smashed through, man. Pavlovich made a big exclamation point, so he's probably your breakthrough guy.
All right, we got fight of the year. There's a couple top contenders here, but this is a pretty straightforward type of category. You got Prohashka versus Teixeira. What a banger fight that was. Burns versus Chimaev. First time Chimaev really got tested, and tooth and nail type of fight. But my pick, it's a little bit off of most people's radar. The one that cost Krause all of the money and allegedly probably spiraled maybe some of this alleged, fixing and stuff like that, because apparently they had all of the money on David Onama. Well, I had Landwehr by decision that night. Nate Landwehr versus David Onama. I mean, Landwehr had an easy path there. He probably could have just secured takedowns, held top position, but he was just like letting this kid up, going to war, slugging it out. Onama probably shouldn't have been sent back out there for round 3, but Krause had all of the monies on David Onama. That's not even allegedly. They had all of the money. They had moved that line from like minus 200 to like minus 350. They were betting on their own fighter, so there's no I'm not casting aspersions or anything like that on him in that type of situation. But like Onama, and they got to the final bell. Onama fought his heart out, fought his soul out, and Landwehr was just a dog that day. Just would not let down whatsoever. Absolute banger fight. A fight that's not going to get all of the attention. Obviously, it was on way smaller. It didn't get the type of attention, of course, that some of these other fights are going to get. But absolute, just mayhem. Like one of the best 15-minute fights you'll ever see. So, yeah, Landwehr versus Onama gets my fight of the year.
I had Nate Landwehr versus David Onama too, man. An absolute thriller. If you know Nate Landwehr, one of my boys, the guy is just, absolute pain train, baby. And the whole time he's on him. And Onama's super talented. So, which happens the case of one guy that's probably more skillful, more athletic, more talented, more explosive, and one guy who's very much that junkyard dog. So it makes a mixture for a great fight. And it was a great fight. Because my boy Paul Shaughnessy took it, I want to pivot off to my number 2. Charles Oliveira versus Justin Gaethje. It was a great fight, man. Charles Oliveira maybe has some durability issues, but every time Gaethje hit him, at least early, he just hit the deck, came back, he resurrected, and right away he would get on Gaethje. And what you know about Gaethje is durability for days. If you're going to finish him, other than Khabib, rear naked choke, second round, suffocate him, is Poirier had to take him deep to take him out. Eddie Alvarez has to take him deep to put him out. Charles, kept getting decked. As soon as he hit the ground, he just popped back up and he got on him. Lands a beautiful combination. It was as thrilling as 7.5 minutes will produce for you. But I did think that was fight of the year. Oh, it's my second choice. I actually agree with you, man. I didn't think you were going to take that. It's so obscure. People go for the big fight. Well, what was the big fight? What was a big fight? Even Thompson versus Kevin Holland from a couple weeks back. That was a great fight, man. Great fight.
Yeah,
was it fight of the year? I don't know.
No.
Knowing that someone was about to lose $2 million. Oh, shit. Talk about dramatics. That would have been my selection as well.
And all the boys in the Discord in shambles as well. That was a rough one. It was a rough one for the Discord. All right, moving on down. We've got Female Fighter of the Year. I'm going to go with Zhang Weili, just off of the pure fact that, she's coming off of 2 straight losses to Rose, very, very close fights. Before that, she had a split decision with Joanna where they had to, really gut it out. And then this year, she rectifies, puts no doubt on that win against Joanna Jędrzejczyk, spinning back for his round 2 finish, and then submitting Carla Esparza in round 2. No easy task. Proves that it's just okay, Zhang Weili's only getting better every single time that we see her. She's adding new wrinkles to her game. She's a real force in the women's strawweight division. Obviously the champion, and I expect big things from her in the year of 2023. So Zhang Weili will get my Female Fighter of the Year for 2022.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. Listen, world champion. She had a couple of fights. She captures the title back over Carlos Esparza and just dominates Carlos Esparza. She's talented. When you look at the other divisions, Amanda Nunes is kind of always your go-to in that category, but she's slowing down. She's just not fighting as much. She's not competing quite as much. She's had that storyline with Juliana Pena. She's been stalled out a little bit. And so for an actual fighter of the year, I would have to say Zhang Weili as well. Listen, there's 4 weight classes for the women, right? If you look at Amanda Nunes having 45 and 35 locked down, then it's either her, Shevchenko at 25, or 115.
Shev didn't have a great year. She had a tough match.
Shev didn't have a great year. She didn't have a great year. She kind of skated by in a few spots, right? Didn't have a great performance the last time out. So it's hard to say that she's your go-to female fighter of the year. Amanda Nunes, same thing, right? She's coming off a loss to Pena December 2021. And then jumps into this fight now. In one fight, 2022 wins over Pena. Does that make you fight of the year? No. So I think you have to go to Zhang Weili, who wins a couple championship bouts. And she just looks by far the best of everybody. I think Rose, if Rose gets motivated again, that's my biggest letdown of the year, was Rose versus Esparza, worst fight of the year. If Rose can come back and make it interesting, sure. But with Joanna Jędrzejczyk out of the picture, with Jessica Andrade kind of floating around between weight classes, I feel like Zhang Weili is going to be a problem for a long time to come. So if this was breakout female fight of the year, I think I'd go with Erin Blanchfield. But because it's just female fight of the year, got to go with the champion.
All right. We got male fighter of the year. This one's interesting. Some people are going to say that it's Volkanovski, but I don't know. Volkanovski's Really impressive. He's number 1 pound for pound in the world for a good reason. Don't get me wrong by any stretch. This is not Alexander Volkanovski slander by any stretch of the imagination. He's marvelous. He's fantastic. He deserves all of the accolades that he's currently getting. But, I mean, he beat Chan Sung Jung, who was a little bit long in the tooth. That was his last little shot. And he beat Max Holloway again, and this is a guy he had already beaten twice before. It didn't really make sense to run it back for a third time between them. I think fight of the year, and I don't think it's even remotely close. Back in November of 2021, this guy was fighting Andreas Michailidis, and people were worrying about his takedown defense. Bruno Silva at the beginning in March of 2022. And there was some real wrinkles in his game that you're concerned about this guy. You're like, I don't think that there's as much of a ceiling for him. Then he knocks out Sean Strickland and claims the middleweight belt after making his debut in the UFC less than a year before. It's Alex Poatan Pereira. Went from absolutely nothing to literally the champion of the world within a 12-month period of time. That's the fighter of the year for my money. What about you?
I got to go with Islam Makhachev. Here's the thing
fair.
with Islam Makhachev. Yeah, when he starts the year, it's he come off win over Drew Dober. Last year, he had a win over Drew Dober, Thiago Moises, and Dan Hooker, right? So, I mean, he's looking at maybe a top. He's got number 1 skill in the world, but at the time, maybe he's ranked a top 10 guy. He comes out this year and he smokes Bobby Green in 3.5 minutes. So, never gets hit once, takes him down, buzzsaws him. That's pretty impressive as far as I'm concerned, but, it's Bobby Green and doesn't have a ground game. Here's what's most impressive about Charles Oliveira, okay? Charles Oliveira is the best. Charles Oliveira is the UFC submission leader. Charles Oliveira is coming off, in my opinion, maybe a fight of the year candidate with Justin Gaethje. He beats Dustin Poirier. He beats them all. He's the man. He's the best. When you look at pretty much every weight class, heavyweight, I really want to see the Ngannou versus Gane rematch because Gane, he almost beat him. And I really want to see Prochazka versus Teixeira again because, it's just so competitive. And when Israel Adesanya, I got to see him versus Pereira again because it's just so close. Usman versus Leon Edwards. Shit, you should run that back. Nobody wants to see Charles fight Islam again. Bro, this guy's the best. Mm-hmm. He buzzsaws you. He kills you. Nobody wants to see you go through that again. That's not close.
He was not scared of going to the ground with Charles. I bet Charles, and immediately I was just oh, he's not scared about going to the mat with him at all. This is bad. I'm about to lose a whole bunch of money. And I did. I learned my lesson fading Khabib and company. It's just not, I got to stop doing it. I got to stop doing it altogether, to be perfectly honest.
I'll take part blame on that. I talked a good game for Charles. It's Charles, if this thing stays standing, Charles is going to batter him. If it goes to the ground, who wants to go to the ground with Charles? But when you listen to what was coming out of AKA, when you listen to what was coming out of Javier Mendez, and Khabib Nurmagomedov more specifically, they're like, Khabib 2.0. This guy's the future. Better striker than Khabib. Better durability than Khabib. Khabib passed the torch to this guy. Khabib don't want to fight no more. Because he's felt this guy in the room and he understands what the future is. The future is now. The future is Islam Makhachev. So he just vacates, and I'm going to allow this guy to be the champion. So to see him go to the ground with Charles Oliveira, no problem, and just dominates him. And then you get thinking, well, who's better than Charles Oliveira off their back? Who's better? Who's a better grappler? Who's going to give him more problems? Nobody. Yeah, nobody. So he can do that to everybody. Well, what about takedown defense? There's got to be someone that can stuff those shots. It's no, there's not. It's oh, man. Well, what if someone wants to clip him? It's yeah, that's pretty much your path to victory. You better hope that you Adriano Martinez's ass. Mm-hmm. Adriano Martinez, by the way, hasn't won a fight since. But you better hope you clip him with something because he's just so problematic. And so when I think about him starting the year, coming off a win over Dan Hooker, maybe not being the guy, and then to see him win 2 fights, not a whole lot, but to dominate Charles, nobody wants to see the rematch. They want to see Volk because it's hey, dude, at least Volk's number 2 in the world, pound for pound. Fight this guy. And even then, Makhachev on another level. So I'm going to go ahead and say, for my money's worth, male fighter of the year.
Worst fighter of the year for the year 2022. I'm going to go Dean Barry, who really only got into the UFC because he was friends with Conor McGregor. They matched him up with Mike the Truth Jackson. An absolute cupcake matchup that you should not have to pull any sort of, mind your P's and Q's. You know, if you have any sort of takedown, like, I mean, Jake Shields just showed us the other day. It's just like, if you have any sort of ground game whatsoever, you can just take him down and maul him that way. Like, Jake Shields hasn't done anything significant in the sport for a long period of time from a fighting perspective. And, I mean, he ragdolled him. It was kind of hilarious seeing that showing up on my Twitter feed this week. But, yeah, like, Barry comes in, gets the eye gouge disqualification in round 1. Pretty embarrassing. And, you know, it's very rare that you're one and done in the UFC. They tried to book that fight like a few times with him. He came in, pulled the eye gouge thing happened, and then they were just like, you're out. We're not even giving you a second opportunity. Very rare in this sport. Dean Barry, you are the worst fighter of the year of 2022.
That is very fair. I was a little bit torn on this one. I decided to go with, well, we'll split it up. We're going to go with a male and a female. I would have taken Alan Bodo. In fact, I will take Alan Bodo. But because I already used him as most fadeable fighter, let's go for somebody not quite as good. Keep in mind, Bodo gave Parker Porter a bit of a run. Keep in mind, he may have won the first round against Josh Parisian. Sucks. So fadeable. Not the worst guy. The worst guy, Harry Hunsucker.
Oh, he sucks.
One fight on the year. I get it. Oh, my God. You can't spell Hunsucker
without suck. As I've said on this program. He's moving down to
205. So you can make an excuse for him the first 2 times. He's like, dude, he fought Tai Tuivasa. I'll give you a pass. Oh, I fought Justin Tafa. I'll give you a pass. Tyson Pedro, 205. At least get out of the 90-second mark. No. 5 seconds over the 1 minute mark. Minute 5. Boom. Done. Harry Hunsucker since been released. No longer with the promotion. But that's got to be the worst male fighter of the year. Worst female fighter of the year. Unless she was given bad advice and was told specifically to be the worst female fighter for a reason, like a monetary gain reason. Gina Mazzani. Gina Mazzani can't buy a goddamn win in the UFC, and 2022 is no different for her. So also a fighter who's since been released, but those would be my worst fighters.
Yeah, Gina, always a danger to be putting money on her. Well, I mean, the year wasn't actually that bad for Gina. You're just thinking, way back. One fight. It was Shanna Young. I mean, in a fight that she was in. I mean, if you laid chalk with Gina Mazzani after my girl Ketchup beating had, sent her to the Shadow Realm back in 2021, I don't know what to tell you. I don't think I did not bet Shayna Young, but I sure as hell did not play chalk Gina Mazzani. Never Gina Mazzani. Just, it ends badly. I can tell you something. It always does end badly. That's just the way it goes. The only win she had in the UFC it was Rachel Ostovich, who also, let's face it, didn't belong at this level.
She belongs somewhere, just maybe not in the UFC. That's for sure. Gina Mazzani, tough go. Megan Anderson comes out and she's like, man, I was training with James Krause, and literally I'm training for a world title fight, and he'd be like, we'll work mitts once a week. Like, he didn't care. Like, he wanted me to lose, and I did lose. It's like interesting, because Gina fights like somebody who works mitts once a week. Like, she tires so fast. Now that last one, because fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And you said Cachoeira would beat her. I didn't believe it. Gina Mazzani looked pretty damn good early. Gina Mazzani also looked like she probably had trained about once a week. And damn Paul. If Paul's did we have a most bettable fighter on the list? Because Cachoeira has been a gold mine for probably nobody else but Paul Shaughnessy.
What I appreciate about my girl Cachoeira is that she's not the greatest grappler. Like, she can be exploited there, but it's like she is going to fight for your money. She is going out there. She is going to war. She's going to take everything coming back at her. And if you want to just hang out and trade with her, it's like she'll knock you out. Like, that's... Ji Young Kim fight, there's many arguments to be made that she did not win that fight. Ariane Lipsky, no doubter. Like Priscilla Cachoeira is like, she gets a lot of heat. She's 4-1 in her last 5 now. It's like it feels like it's all coming together. And they mark her as a dog. She's like a dog in every single fight. Like I'm pot committed at this point. I'm just gonna keep betting my girl catch a beating. Love her. Well, she's my fighter of the year. In like pretty much every single year. All right, let's move on. We've got this one's more of a Cody Saftic special. We got the apple pie shitter of the year for the year 2022. Hit us with it.
Yeah, this one really pains me to say because like I would categorize him as my boy, but Peter Yan really did me dirty this year, man. He's got 2 fights in 2022. I load up on him versus Aljamain because he's better than Aljamain. You've seen the first fight. You've seen what he's capable of. You've seen Aljamain gas. You've seen him beat his ass. So yeah, I load up on him. He's a top ticket guy for me. He's gonna win, sure. No. Aljamain fought one hell of a fight. I'll double down on the some bitch and get my money back. So he's fighting Sean O'Malley. How's he going to lose to Sean O'Malley? And then he does. I love the guy. I'll bet him his next fight. I'll bet him every fight. And he did me dirty in 2022, Paul. That is my apple pie shitter of the year, Peter Yan.
I don't have an apple pie shitter because it doesn't really apply to my bets whatsoever. That's a Cody Saftic exclusive award right there. All right, we got comeback fighter of the year. So not comeback in terms of the actual fight, but like somebody who like we thought maybe was left for dead and, was at the end of their career and is kind of resurged, reinvigorized, and looks to have a half-decent outlook for the year of 2023. When I look at me looking at like a little bit of like cheater situation, looking at different places that run these types of things, it seems that Aljamain Sterling won it. And the only reason why he won it was they listed as social. It was a comeback because he was like ridiculed on like Twitter. Do you have a clear-cut winner of this? I'm gonna have to think about this one for a second here, and then I'll give you an answer.
Yeah, honestly, I don't really have a great answer for you. What I would say is that I got a couple answers for you, but I'm going with I got 2. Maybe not the most popular opinion. The first one, Jeff Neal. Jeff Neal only actually fought 1 time in 2022. Here's why I did put him as comeback fighter of the year. Dude's supposed to be the best, right? Dude is supposed to be an absolute, problem. He's going to be the man. He loses to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. He looks lethargic. He loses his next fight. He looks lethargic. I thought he robbed Santiago Ponzinibbio. I truly did. I didn't think it was a win for him. And he takes his 1 fight this year against Vicente Luque, and he looked awesome. Now, this is the guy that battled some problems in the past. I had written him off. If you look going into the Wonderboy Thompson fight, he's the favorite over Wonderboy. He's supposed to beat Wonderboy and get a title shot. And then he gets a DUI. And then it turns out there's a handgun in his car. And then he gets derailed. Then he has some injuries. Then he's sick in hospital. So to see him go out and beat Vicente Luque, I have him written off. But Vicente's a top 5 guy. To smash him, to knock him out, to put yourself back into title contention, pretty impressive. So that's why I would go with. Now, because we're not just doing UFC, I'm going to put Mike Perry in the same category. Mike Perry's a bum, okay? He gets cut from the UFC. I've always been very adamant he would be a bare-knuckle boxing god, but he's losing fights in the UFC. They cut him. He goes to bare-knuckle boxing. Turns out he's a god. God damn. He goes out and beats Julian Lane in a fight of the year contender. And then he goes out there and beats MVP Michael Venom Page in a fight of the year contender. And now all of a sudden the guy's like the hottest thing in BKB. He's getting paid a ton of money. His career has been completely resurrected. Not in MMA, not in the UFC. But for a guy that was kind of like, he'll probably be in jail in the next year, to now, I get paid almost $1 million per fight defending a title in BKFC. Bro, that's a hell of a comeback. So Mike Perry, bro, he's not even beating up old men out of Applebee's anymore. He's like getting paid, Paul, traveling the world. That is one hell of a comeback.
That is a hell of a comeback. That actually makes a lot of sense to me. It would have been Carla Esparza for me, but then she obviously just lost the belt recently. Chris Curtis, like, he had a good year, I suppose, but I don't know. The loss to Hermanson doesn't really sit completely well with me, and I think comeback for him was actually more 2021. It's like the guy had retired. He had, like, pretty much given up on the sport because he wasn't getting, like, his due recognition. Like, I feel like the comeback has already happened for him. I don't know. I'll go with, like, the overwhelming, what the crowd says, and that Aljamain Sterling was so disrespected after, everyone said he took a flop and that he faked it, and then to go and take on Peter Yan and win the way he did was pretty impressive, to be perfectly honest. And I'll say the comeback, because, like, a lot of people still don't like him whatsoever, but, like, his reputation in the MMA Twitter streets and, like, in the community in general was really bad. It was at an all-time low, and to beat Peter Yan the way that he did, leave no doubt this time. I would say he's a worthy champion of comeback fighter of the year. Biggest quitter of the year. This one's easy. It's Derek Minner, and
you took my answer.
We just move on. We just move on to the next one, because allegedly, he had an injury. I've never seen any sort of, like, I've never seen anything. I've never seen any doctor's reports, anything like that. I mean, the fight looked. Let's call a spade a spade. We're deep enough into the show right now. We're not going to get sued. It's just like that's how you fix a fight, Cody. That's how you fix a fight. That's how, like, if you are going to fix a result to happen as a first round finish or first round knockout finish, you go in, you fake injury, you throw a kick, you say your leg hurts, you keel over, you cover your face, because then that gives you you can't unleash a strike in the risk of, oh my God, what if I land it, he gets knocked out, and then all of my boys in the Discord lose all of the money. It's just like, no, the exact thing that he did is how you fix a fight to have a first round knockout, which is what all of the markets had moved that way. It's just like, Derek Minner, congratulations. You won something, buddy. You won all of the attention of the Ontario Betting Commission, Alberta Commission, and New Jersey Commission, and you won the biggest quitter of the year on Dogger Pass Podcast. Derek Minner. I mean, nobody in their right mind signs this guy anymore. Like, he just committed career suicide as far as I'm concerned, because, I mean, what promoter, unless you're going over to, like, Russia and they want you to take a dive, like, nobody's going to sign this guy. Biggest quitter of the year, Derek Minner, and it's not even debatable.
It's funny you say that. I actually thought to myself, I'm going to try to sign this guy because I'm trying to find a fight for TJ Laramie, and fucking Derek Minner actually submitted him, bro. He submitted him. So I was like, let's just run this back. But I don't know. Apparently his knees hurt, so he needs some time off, I suppose. But yeah, listen, I keep seeing this everywhere I go, right? I see the same argument over and over and over. And if you're a fan of James Krause, then you know, because you've tried to use this bullshit excuse a million times. TJ Dillashaw did the same thing as Derek Minner, right? Did the same thing.
Yeah,
went in, hurt. Yeah, went in, hurt. So what makes it different? Well, I'm going to tell you right now the difference, right? TJ Dillashaw goes in trying to win. Knows his shoulder's bum and decides, I'm not going to wrestle. I got to keep this thing standing. So he talks trash to Aljamain Sterling in the press conference. You can't stand with me. You can't stand with me. Because he knows he can't wrestle. And in the fight, he wants to strike, but he can't wrestle. He fought to the best of his abilities without disclosing it to anybody that would affect anything.
Yeah, it's totally different.
Went out on his shield. The guy went out on his shield. He made it to the second round. His arms popped out a zillion times. Aaron Pico, just lost to Jeremy Kenny in Bellator. He looks at his corner man between rounds. Shoulders popped out. Corner grabs. He's shaking. It's disgusting. But it's like these guys they're going out to win. Here's my one argument about Derek Minner. You know your knee is blown now. It's blown to shreds. Okay? I know it. Yeah, what? Two kicks, Paul. He throws the first one. He knows it's bum, and he decides to throw a second one. Like, that's not a game plan. You didn't have a game plan. Pull guard. Push him into the cage and try to drop down on a leg. James Krause has high ring IQ. He has good coaching abilities. They put together proper strategies. But the strategy here was do not get out of the first round.
Get finished in the first round. That was the strategy, so that we can win all the money. It's very clear.
Talk about a quit.
Don't tell me about your leg hurting when all you did in the fight is throw your injured leg, which I haven't seen a doctor come out and actually make like a report on the actual injury there. Minner's been hiding from social media. It's just like everything about the entire situation stinks. Let's call a spade a spade. If you're injured, you don't throw that injured leg 2 times. That's the only thing he did in this fight. Threw the injured leg twice. Okay, well, I thought you had an injury backstage. Like, it wouldn't make any sense to go in there and throw it. Like, you would just, I'm going to go, like, if you're going to do that, I'm going to stand here. I'm going to throw haymakers. Maybe I can clip them. If you were actually trying to win the fight. And that's why everyone who has half a brain cell in this industry that looks at this entire situation goes like, that's what a fixed fight looks like. And that's why he's fired. And I mean, there's an entire investigation. It's going to happen. And I mean, there's other names that I've heard thrown around, and I hope they're not involved, but it's going to be an interesting...
Was it the Sanko thing?
No, I mean, Cody, we would have had a much... If we were on the inside of all of this, we would have had a much better year at the books. I'll tell you that much. Nobody was feeding me the fix information on any of these fights. Yeah, no, I've heard about Sanko too. I hope that Sanko's not actually involved. But like, yeah, let's not get any deeper into that whatsoever. Hopefully, it's not like intentionally helping the entire situation. James Krause is dirty. Minner's dirty. That's all we know at this point in time. And hopefully that's all it is. But I think there's a lot more to it. We'll find out in the next, 6 months or so. I don't know how long the government takes to investigate something like this. Biggest decline. Oh, do you have something to add to that?
No. I was going to say, the government's going to take their sweet-ass time.
They always do. They always do. Government hours, buddy. We got biggest decline. I was gonna say Tony Ferguson, because I mean, he had gotten some respect. Well, you're losing to Justin Gaethje, Charles Oliveira, Beneil Dariush, the best of the best. Michael Chandler, he's up there. He's up in that top 10. He's up in the top 5 conversation sometimes. Getting guillotine choked by Nate Diaz in a fight that was like really, really close. When it's like, I think Nate Diaz is like super, super washed.
You thought it was close? I thought he was getting his ass beat. He looked totally washed. You're right, washed fighter.
I'm saying like, I think like that was like a telltale sign. It's just like, oh, it's not just the level of competition. Tony's dead. And it brings me back to like a few years ago when people were like, oh, Tony, snap jutsu, he's gonna cause Khabib all the problems. It's like, Tony was never gonna cause Khabib even the most smallest modicum of a problem. Like, it was never actually gonna be close. Tony was never in the same league as Khabib. And this 5-fight losing streak, two of the losses have been in the 2022 calendar year. That's the biggest decline. That guy went from being a hero, being on an absurd winning streak, having all of the everybody in MMA called him one of the best guys. He was like he was on pound for pound list, everything like that. And now it's like he's pretty much dust. So Tony Ferguson, biggest decline in my humble opinion. You?
Yeah, 2-part answer, right? So the first one is may not be the most popular, but it should be. And then the second one is the no-brainer. The first one is actually biggest decline, the Daukaus brothers. Okay, Kyle and Chris Daukaus. If you look at 2021, these guys are on a roll, man. Kyle Daukaus damn near beats Kevin Holland. Oh my God, had they not given that a no contest, we would have cleaned up on that card. All the same, dude just beat Kevin Holland, okay? He's on a roll. His brother Chris, meanwhile, is winning meaningful fights at heavyweight. Fast forward to 22. Chris Daukaus had 2 fights. He fought Curtis Blades, knocked out 17 seconds into the second round. He fought Jairzinho Rozenstruik, knocked out 23 seconds into the very first round. So the decline for Chris Daukaus, certainly there. Kyle Daukaus, meanwhile, He got knocked out in 2 straight fights as well. He fought Roman Dolidze, got knocked out in the first round. He fought Eric Anders and got demolished. Now, Eric Anders, super talented. I mention that all the time. Like, not a go-getter. Doesn't knock guys out really for the most part. Unless you're Vinicius Moreira, which you do not want to be, by the way. Daukaus brothers went a combined 0-4, and they got knocked out in all 4 of those fights. Biggest decline, the Daukaus brothers. That's the unpopular opinion. The popular opinion, James Krause. Come on, man. Talk about a decline. He starts the year. He's the man.
I was thinking
He's
about fighters, but you're right. You're right. I mean, the answer is James Krause.
Yeah, like, talk about a guy that starts 2022 where it's like sky's the limit, okay? He's on Ariel Helwani's podcast, and he says, I make more money betting than I ever did fighting and coaching. I have a UFC champion, Brandon Moreno, caliber guy, in the gym. I have top guys like a David Onama, top guys like a Jeff Molina. The sky's the limit for my gym, and people are starting to come to my gym. It's flourishing. I have a YouTube channel. It's flourishing. I have a Discord. 5,000 members, $50 a month. I'm cleaning it up. And then there's the sun, and there's me flying. Oh shit. Flew right into the sun. Lost the money on David Onama, got desperate, made a bad play. Nah, that's all allegedly. I don't know. But talking about a guy that started up on the top of the mountain to begin the year, bottom of the mountain to end the year. That's gotta be him. Gotta be. If not him, Daukaus brothers.
All right, and that leads us into worst decision of the year, and that would be to James Krause for fixing the Derek Minner fight.
Bro, you're not wrong. God damn, Paul Shaughnessy, my boy.
Man, did you screw up that situation, my friend? I don't know. The chalk answer in this situation is gonna be Paddy versus Gordon. But I mean that round 3. I mean, I ended up actually betting Paddy by decision after round 2 because I thought that round 2 was close enough that you could give it to Paddy. And, like, the odds were pretty wide. I bet him on the money line as well after round 2. Like, round 2 I thought was a Paddy round. And then round 3, I mean, if you're talking about octagon control, all of that type of stuff, like, yeah, Jared Gordon probably should have won the decision. But, like, I don't know if it was actually, like, as bad as people made it out to be. I think the fact that Paddy is, like, a hype job that the UFC is trying to promote, and the fact that he won on all 3 judges' scorecards, that's what kind of needles people a little bit more than the decision itself. I didn't put too much thought into this one, Cody. Do you have a worst decision of the year listed for yourself?
No, I honestly have to agree with the same exact one. It's just amazing to me that it's like, okay, we're in a venue, full venue, thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, and every single person scores it for Jared Gordon. Okay. What about the people at home? What about the people at home? They got a great angle from the fight. They don't got any bias. Well, they do. They got the commentary. But all the same, you're watching it at home. You got the great angle. How does everybody at home score? Jared Gordon. Okay. What about the media members? I don't want to offend the people at home, but, like, I know media members, and they're like me. They're hardcore. They are hardcore. They watch everything. They know everybody, and then they spend their free time researching even more. So those people, I kind of take their opinion a little bit more. Okay, so MMA Mania, Bloody Elbow, all 3 guys for Sure Dog, Casey Linden, good guy. Wrestling Observer, Mania, Tapped Out, Post Wrestling, Ben Davis, Ben the Bane. Nick Baldwin from The Score, got MMAfighting.com, Combat Press, Bloody Elbow again, Severe MMA, Wrestling Observer, Cage Side Press, Junkie, The Athletic, MMA Sucka. Everybody scores the fight for Jared Gordon. Mm-hmm. And then there's 3 people that matter. See, really the only 3 people in the world that matter. All 3, not just 2, Paul. 2, you can kind of like, be like, oh shit. One guy at least. No. All 3. So how do you have thousands of people in the venue, millions of people at home, the most important people, the media member? I respect them. I'm not a media guy because, like, I don't consider myself a journalist. Drinking beers, dropping F-bombs, talking fights, gambling. I'm not a journalist. These guys are journalists. And I tell you what, I respect a lot of those guys I named. Not all of them. Mm-hmm. I respect a lot of those guys I named, okay? Yeah, how does everybody score the fight for Jared Gordon and the 3 people that matter to score the fight?
Well, in fairness,
it's a little tough to swallow.
Dan Urban from Couchside Judges, he scored it for Patty
Yeah,
Pimblett too.
yeah.
So.
And so I actually saw that. And one, joke of a publication. But two, is his name Dan Urban or is it Dan Pimblett? Because that's the only way I can see rendering that score. So I don't know what to tell you, man. It was a bad decision.
It was not a great decision. I'm sure there were other decisions that were really bad, but it's like, I don't know. We've been in this game long enough, Cody, that it's just like, you're going to get your side, like from a betting perspective, you're going to get your side of the good ones and the bad ones. Feel fortunate when you get gifted a bad one on your side, and then be gracious when you are gifted it. You know what I mean? Like, it's, you gotta take the good with the bad. This is never gonna get better. You know, people are always just like, we need this. It's just like, it's a big boys club. Like, that's how the judging works. It's just like, it's been the same people since me and you started doing this show 9 years ago. It's the same people that are continuously messing up these scorecards. They've never changed it. They're never going to change it. They like the people that they have in place right now for whatever reason. Is it nefarious reasons? Perhaps. There's a possibility that does exist. But it's just like Doug Crosby, Sal D'Amato, Chris Lee, like Adelaide Bird. It's like they've all been around for all of this time. Nobody ever gets fired. Nobody ever actually seemingly has to go through some extra sort of, you know, training or anything like that. It's a big club, and you ain't in it, as Dan Carlin would have said before, referring to something completely different than that. But you are not in the big club, Cody. So I don't know how they're gonna actually fix it, but like, I wouldn't hold your breath waiting for these commissions. And it's not even the UFC's fault. It's just like, it's the commission's fault. They hired these people. Yeah. And they are completely fine with having the exact same scrubs who continually mess this entire situation up. And people are going to argue about decisions all of the time. Like, it's not, especially with gambling and, you know, like more people putting money down on things, people are going to see it the way, you know, everyone's going to have a little bit of bias. That's normal. That's fine. But it's not going to get any better. I mean, my general opinion, which is like really, really crazy, and you know, people are free to not agree with it, is that the only way to fix judging in MMA is to remove it altogether. I want to see either finishes or draws. I think if you got into round 5 of a title fight, think about the risks fighters would take. If they can't afford to have a draw. I mean, it doesn't really make any sense, but like, if you want to actually get rid of decisions that you don't agree with, the only way to do it is just get rid of judging. This happens in every judge sport. It happens in figure skating. It happens at other sports in the Olympics that are judged. It's like, this is nothing new. It's the human condition, and there is obviously some nefarious behaviors that happen, but for the most part, it's just human error. I don't think it's all nefarious. I don't think people are trying to rig these spots altogether, but I think human error. It's just like, maybe somebody's just like really bored watching Jared Gordon hold Patty Pimblett up against the cage in round 3. He's paid to be there. He's supposed to be focused on the fight, but he's not paying attention whatsoever. I think that's probably factored into it as well. I don't know. Just people think that this is going to be fixed. It's like, we've been doing this show for 9 years now, Cody. It isn't going to get fixed. So, like, either get used to it or stop betting on MMA. If you think everything's rigged, then don't bet into a rigged market. Like, that's the advice I would leave for you.
Well, I hate to say it, Paul Shaughnessy, but whenever the government's involved, it's never good. Name me one instance where government oversight ends up being a good thing. Never. So this is the same thing. People love to shit on the promoter. Man, the UFC's in on the fix. Man, the UFC hired these refs. No, they actually did it. It's the government. It's a government program. It's the same thing here. These people, the guy gets paid $100,000 plus to work every other weekend. Maybe 12 weekends out of the year that there's events on. 14 weekends out of the year that there's events on. $100,000 plus. It's a government position. These judges, it's a government position. So I don't know. I just feel like when someone who's got a nice cozy job and it's not like, hey, you can have 10 cards that don't make any sense. You could be Adelaide Bird. You could have everybody making fun of you, everybody questioning you. You could be Saul D'Amato. You could have people wanting investigations opened in on you. It doesn't matter. You get paid anyways. So why would you care? Why would you try to do a good job? Why would you not just mark down whatever you please, right? So I don't know. I feel like the government oversight has to someone get kicked out. And then that being said, well, then who's going to hire the judges? The UFC? Well, now you're getting into a very, very gray area James Krause has already been into. And you don't want to go there. So difficult. But the question is, what are the 2 worst scorecards of the year, right? So you and I both agree that a Paddy
worst
Pimblett
decision.
scorecard.
I think the worst scorecard is actually I think Danny Sabatello 50-45.
Yes,
bad.
so that's where I'm going with it. What are the 2 worst scorecards of the year? Well, whoever gave that 50-45 Sabatello, and then I guess whoever scored the fight for Paddy Pimblett.
That was
the
Doug.
common
That was Doug
denominator
Crosby.
Is the exact same.
And he's
guy,
gonna
Doug
keep
Crosby.
his job because that's how all of this works. The people who actually care are not involved in it, and it comes down to the big club, and you're not in it. Doug's not going to lose his job. They're going to continue rolling this guy out here. He should have been cut years ago when he had issues with Weidman and all of the guys in Long Island.
I like Quinta.
Yeah. He had no business back then. He used to go on Chael's podcast and say crazy things on there. It's just like this guy, now that there's betting involved, it's just like it's very, very clear that like he's either at the very least incompetent, at the very worst crooked. I don't know which one, maybe a combination of both. But yeah, Doug's got to go. And if he still continues to judge, that'll just show you that like they're not committed to fixing this stuff.
Because it's a government position. If the UFC didn't like the person, they'd be gone. They didn't like Yves Leving. They didn't like Mario Yamasaki. They were forced to use those guys because they're commission guys. So Crosby's the same thing. What bugs me is the guys from Las Vegas, okay? He's judging fights predominantly in Las Vegas. The 2 worst cards of the year we just talked about, they happen on 2 separate nights back to back. He scores a 50-45 for Sabatello in Connecticut. Okay?
Hops on
and then
a plane.
travels
Doesn't pay for his own flight, I'm
miles.
sure. Somebody else pays. The government pays for him to fly that goof across the country so that he can...
Quite literally across the country.
Literally
across the country. It's 2,600 miles.
Yeah.
It's a 40-hour drive. Okay, so let's take all that out of consideration. We'll take all that into consideration. Let's say you are doing any type of job, okay, that requires thought process and focus and a good understanding and good judgment, okay? You're sitting there on Friday. You show up to the venue. It's 4 o'clock. Prelims start at 6. You work the prelims right through. You have to be at the venue. You judge your fights. You enter a terrible scorecard. Now you have to go right from the venue to the airport. You fly from the airport all the way across the country. You get to the airport. You got to get a shuttle service. Takes you to your hotel. You check in your hotel. Now it's like, oh man, it's call time to get to the venue. And you're sitting there. Is your judgment going to be all that good? Or is your judgment not going to be impaired? I mean, you're not really focused. You just traveled from one side of the country to the other. You just judged an entire card, worked an entire night, and now you're supposed to understand, you're tired, you're lazy, and you don't give a shit. People start mailing it in. That's what they mail it in. Even some of these great cappers, sometimes you'll tune into their stuff, and it's like they'll drop a line that'll tell you they didn't watch any of the fights. They'll be like, oh, yeah, man, this guy's a knockout. What was his last fight? Who did he knock out in his last fight? What was his last fight? It's like, did you not watch his last fight? Why are you telling me who you think's going to win? You don't even know who you fought in his last fight. You'll see these slip up. There's a slip up from here. He's mailing it in. He flew from one end to the other. He doesn't care what he puts down. So you're sitting there, and the crowd's going nuts. It's like, who won? Well, I don't know. Jeez, everyone's cheering for Paddy, and Paddy's their hometown guy. Seems like he's working him in the clinch a bit. So you just mark it down. Yeah, mark it down. And is Crosby the only problem? No, because 2 other guys actually scored it the same way. And Crosby scored it for Sabatello. He's the only guy that scored for Sabatello, and I actually scored the fight for Sabatello. So me and Crosby would actually be on the same page. He just scored all of the rounds for Sabatel. So there's no broken way to fix it. It is broken. There's no real way to fix it. Like you said, finish only makes sense, but then you'd hate to see a guy dummy a guy for 3 rounds and not get a decision out of it. But maybe more judges' scorecards should be draws. If the fight's that close, if the round's that close,
why not get 5 judges?
5 judges. Give me 5 judges. Give me 5 judges, and everybody at home gets to vote as like a 6th judge. And if 3 of the judges got it one way,
you do not want fans at home voting for anything. That's dumb. Because then you'll just have the bettors. You'll just have the bettors voting for who they think. Just one, based on their own bets.
No. The bettors are a small percentage. It's who's the most popular guy. So
that's
like
dumb.
John Jones, let's say. Yeah, no, right. But it's a 6th judge. So I'm saying is you have your 5 judges. If 3 give it one way, 2 give it the other way, well, there you go. It'd be interesting to say 3 gave it one way, 2 gave it the other way, and the fans at home voted this other way. It's 3 aside. Well, that sounds pretty close to me. 3 guys got it one way, 2 guys got it the other, and everyone at home thinks it's a different way altogether. Let's give it a draw. Who cares? Boxing has draws all the time, right? There's money in the rematch. Just run the fight back. It's that close. Just run the fight back. No, instead they got to screw somebody, and then people are upset at home, and I don't know. It's just a whole thing. So I think the main thing out of our betting year 2022, not necessarily the betting year, but just like the whole landscape of the UFC is like they got a lot of changes to make, man. They got bad judges. They've got no real go-to star. They're struggling to find their foothold. But in saying that, it's like, they had a better year than Jake Paul did, so it can't be that bad.
No, Jake Paul won fights.
He won fights, just like his whole persona. I think people just don't give a shit anymore. They just don't care. Maybe they did at first because it was a pandemic and there was no other sports to watch, so they got into it. But they just don't care.
That's fair. And the issue is that everything's rigged now, Cody. That's what me and Pat were talking about. Me and Pat were talking about the other day, and that's one of the things that really annoys me right now. That I see out there, and not just the MMA gambling space, just in the gambling space in general. They do it in football, and it's just it's either, how it used to be win or learn? Now it's win or rigged. It's just you either won your bet or the entire thing was rigged, and it's just one, if you guys think that any of the, if you think, obviously with Krause, there was some shady stuff going on, and maybe there were some fights that were, but if you think as a broad statement that the entire industry is rigged, well, one, you shouldn't be an idiot betting into markets that are already, juiced, set up for you to lose. And if you think that they're rigged and you don't have the inside information, then you're the idiot for betting into that stuff. So it's I find that, people just aren't able to take responsibility for their own losses these days. That's what I really see, and that's what's really annoyed me the most in 2022 is just seeing people the moment that they don't win their bet, it's just well, that was rigged, the ref was in on it. It's just how about taking some accountability that you're just not a good bettor? Just own it. That's fine. Not everybody's gonna be a great bettor. I have bad bets all the time, but you'll never see me saying that these things are entirely rigged. I'll take a shot at myself and say that was a bad read. I was wrong on that. I thought I probably maybe should have, maybe I should have got that one. We'll get that one back. It's just the inability of the current bettor, and maybe it's because there was such an influx of new bettors that came in with the legalization of gambling. But it's just the number of people calling everything rigged out there. I don't know if it's a Donald Trump thing. It's ever since, Donald Trump lost the election and, he wasn't able to accept the facts. He wasn't willing to accept the results. So it was obviously rigged. It was all set. Everybody was against him. Maybe that has a little bit to do with it. But I find all of it very annoying. No one's able to just take self-ownership for their own shortcomings. And it's just it's very annoying. Maybe this is just a product of me getting old, but it's when I see that stuff on my timeline all the time, I'm just you're never going to get better with that mentality. If you think that the only reason why you lose in life is because everybody's out to get you, well, you're actually the loser in the first place. So, That's not a very positive way for me to close this show, but that's actually kind of like, I hope that kind of gets fixed in the next calendar year. They're like, you either, if you think that everything's rigged, then stop betting all the way together and take some ownership over your own losses. Like, I had a bad year this year. I lost, I mean, I don't really keep track of units, but I lost over 10 grand, maybe like more like 15, 17 grand in UFC betting. I've had some successes in some other things that I've done, but like UFC was a really bad year. That's part of my process. I got a dog. That's been keeping me busy. It's made me watch a little bit less tape. See, like, these are all things. It's like me taking ownership over the fact that I had a bad year. And, bad years are going to happen in gambling all the time. But it's like, my biggest annoyance this year was just like, nobody is, like, people are just not willing to take ownership. That's like, maybe it's me who sucks. Nobody ever really thinks about that. I don't know. I'm just spitting at this point. I've had some holiday nog and rum, but that is the one thing that's really annoyed me this year. I've just seen like a real rise of like people not being able to take ownership for their own shortcomings, and it really grinds my gears, as they say. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, or if I should just wrap up and finish off the show, Cody.
I'll give you my diatribe, and then we get out of here. I grew up, nice neighborhood. The neighbor down the road, filthy rich, man. These kids are rich. They had the Hummer H2. Nobody had the Hummer H2. They drove a Cadillac Escalade. Nobody outside of Chad Muska had a Cadillac Escalade. The house was huge. They always had a nice day. I remember one time I had a Huffy, like a Huffy bike, like bicycle. And anyways, I go down to the kid's place. It's his birthday. And his mom brings him out. A Huffy. It was a nice Huffy too. Same bike. Well, not the same bike as mine. I was like, they're both Huffies. Anyways, we're riding around. He's like, oh, my mom says my bike's better than your bike. I remember being like 13 years old, being like, why would your mom tell you your bike's better than my bike? What does that matter? And as a parent, why would you tell your kid that? Like, hey, that thing I got you? Better than your buddy's thing. Like, why does that come up? But anyways, we play PS2 together all the time, right? Go over there after school. The guy had like 2 fucking PS2s. Nobody had 2 PS2s. He had 2 PS2s. Anyway, playing the game, and it's Lord of the Rings Twin Towers, right? Playing this game along, and you get to like the final mission. You gotta play Gollum. You can't beat it. Just can't beat it. So we try a couple times, try again, keep losing, try again. And at this point, it's just like, we just can't beat it, but we'll beat it eventually. You just gotta keep trying. Figure it out. Try a different strategy. No. This kid loses it. This kid absolutely snaps, loses it, pulls the disc out of the tray, snaps it in half, goes downstairs and tells his mom, we need to pencil a letter right now to the makers of this game. I want to sue them. I want to sue the makers of this game for making it too hard. And he was adamant on this point. And he's like, he would have been like 12. I was like 13. And he pesters his mom for, it's like, we need to sue the makers of this game for making it too difficult. And it's like, now I'm 31 years old. It was like almost 20 years ago. But I think about that all the time. Like, why not just accept that you need to get better? Why not just accept that because everything had been spoon-fed to him. He was a spoon-fed kid. Everything. Had the nicest cars, had the nicest toys, had the nicest house, had the nicest backyard with a pool and a basketball court. Like, whatever. I hung out there quite literally every day. It was just like the coolest place to hang out. Like, had like a golf simulator and, had 6 skateboards. And it was like such a sweet place. But like, he couldn't take ownership on the fact that like he wasn't good enough to beat the game. Who cares? It's something trivial, right? It's just a video game. He couldn't accept it. So like, I've always carried that. And like later on in life, oh, by the way, he's like massively depressed now. Yeah, rich as hell, has his own condo, has a huge house, massively depressed, doesn't have a girlfriend, has trouble connecting with people, and just like a very depressed person. And like, I love life. There's nothing better. You get one crack at it, and I'm just like enjoying it. Got a kid, I'm married, got a place. Just like, life is good. If I lost, and by the way, what, 10 grand, whatever, I've lost on a single night. You go to bed an hour later. It isn't, you don't lose sleep on it. It's like, oh yeah, life is good as a whole. But I find when people get saying it's a fix and everything's against me, I'm not betting anymore because this is bullshit. It's like, well, you're making yourself be the victim. You put yourself in the situation, so you either make it out to the other side or you just shut up. Like, I don't know. So
I mean, it's
I do
tough.
actually
It's
echo a
tough
lot
to
of the
beat
same
these.
sentiments as you.
It's tough to beat these markets. Like, if you don't think you can beat this market, then you shouldn't be betting. Like, it's, they say it's, it's for entertainment purposes only. That's partially true. We've had some very, very good years in the past. I've gotten to where I am, losing 17 or 15, 17 grand on MMA betting this year would never have happened if I didn't have a whole bunch of successful years before this. When we first started doing this, it was like 5, 10, sometimes the odd $20 bet. Like, we worked our way up quite a bit. So it is what it is. Yeah, I mean, who knows? We'll see what happens in 2022. It's kind of annoying. 2023. It's just annoying seeing like the same things being said constantly. It's just like, maybe you're not
We're
like,
getting old, dog.
we are
That's
getting
the
old.
thing.
We're getting old,
Care
and
more because you're getting old.
I care about what? Like, I don't.
No, I care too. It's the same thing. It's like I used to skateboard, right? And then people at the mall would be like, "When you get your skateboard, man? When you get skateboarding?" I was like, "You old folks don't know shit." Now, I generally don't care for skateboarders. I don't care for the mall. If I go to the mall, it's like, get out of here. So I'm what I once disliked.
You know what? I know
exactly
what you're saying, because it's like both of us really don't do like, pounding our chest like when we win bets, like going out there saying that I'm the best, and yeah. But it's like those are things that we probably did do like earlier in our career doing this. Like when you're in your like early 30s and stuff, like that is kind of a thing. It's like proving that you belong, proving that you're, that you're worthy of praise. Like that's a thing that, late 20s, early 30s. And then like you get, like I'm 37 years old right now. It's just like, I don't really care what other people think. I had a bad year this year. But yeah, frankly, I don't really care what other people think about me. And the only thing I actually care about is my own bets on a week-to-week basis. Like that's where I've gotten to this point. I'm not into the chest pounding and all of the other stuff. Like we're pretty removed from like a lot of like the tout services and stuff these days. Like that's not our jam. We're not trying to be the best. We're trying to be more or less the most entertaining. And if we can all win some money along the way, even better. But yeah, the industry really, really grew, and there's a lot of really, really good touts out there that are selling you their picks, and they're very, very worthy of getting that money. But yeah, I mean, the entire industry has really changed a lot since we started doing this about 9 years ago. So yeah, I mean, onwards and upwards into 2023, Cody, my man.
To end things off, I would also like to double back on Paul and recommend James Krause is the tout of the year. He gave you some. Minner's gonna lose. Minner's gonna lose in the first round. Minner's gonna lose in under 1.5. Minner's gonna lose in 2.5.
Nobody else was giving you that level of betting advice. James Krause, tout of the year, the final award that we will talk about this year. I appreciate you guys
spending your time with us and hanging out with us, but James Krause advice, a little fight, was pretty damn good. So anyways, I'll leave you with that. Thank you very much for joining the holiday episode. And Paul, my man, thank you very much, as always. Producer Megan, thank you very much. And to whoever brewed up that spiced rum eggnog for one Paul Shaughnessy, thank you very much.
Those are the fine people at Giant Tiger and the NSLC. Right here in Nova Scotia. But that is it for us this week. That is it for us this year. Hope you enjoyed the show. For producer Megan, Cody Saftic, I'm Paul Shaughnessy saying goodbye and good luck.